Marie, okay, thank you.
Okay, so let me, okay, do you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Okay. And also, David and Marie, thank you for your patience. I've been wanting to do this presentation for a while because Rotary had such a big impact on my efforts, and I appreciated it so much. So it's taken me a while, but thank you. So I'm going to go through photos of the different stages, which I think explains my work the best. So I was a volunteer quite a long time ago, so it's 24 years, but I stayed in contact with my counterpart, with the director, with other volunteers. I wasn't active with volunteering or with the Peace Corps Alliance or doing any sort of fundraising or volunteering before the full-scale invasion. I have a full-time job. I have now two 17-year-old twins who are applying for college. So the volunteering really started after the full-scale invasion when I was looking at what can I do? And then I talked with my counterpart and my director for their advice because once you work as a Peace Corps volunteer, you really go through the people who know what they're doing and have the historical um, context and know the relationship. So everything I did was under their guidance and their advice. So my volunteering for fundraising started about a month after the full-scale invasion. And then by December, November, December that year, my fundraising was sort of winding down and I wasn't sure what else to do. And I was put in contact with Marie through Partnering for Peace and through the RPCV Alliance. After that was over, I became more involved with the Alliance for Ukraine, which is the Return Peace Corps group, and then joined the board earlier this year. And also, as fundraising was slowing down, I became more involved with the artisans who are also activists to sell their things in New York because they don't have an audience or a market there anymore. uh, there I am many years ago. So Bakhmut is in eastern Ukraine. It's a few hours from the border. I learned Russian when I was there because at that point, everyone spoke Russian in the East. After 2014, everyone I know switched to Ukrainian. Now, they're accepting of people speaking Russian, but there's a lot more nationalism after 2014. It was a nice city. There's some of the buildings in the park. This was the NGO some of the volunteers for the NGO that I worked with. The director's in the back. My counterpart was holding a flag. This was for an Earth Day celebration. They had a rally. They did a petition. After communism, environmental activists were the most vocal at the beginning because it was the least threatening. You know, it's we're promoting the environment, but by promoting the environment, it was about civic engagement and transparency. So it was addressing a lot of other things than the environment. A few more things about this city. They were known for their champagne factory. Tourists would, which you hear salt mines. It doesn't sound exciting, but there were sculptures down there. There would be concerts. There was, I think they called it a sanatorium where people could stay overnight and have the health benefits from salt. There were different factories that made cakes. Uh, Later, I'll talk about the artisans. After 2014, when Russia was trying to assert dominance in the region, the artisans and activists really were promoting Ukraine. I mean, they always felt Ukrainian, they wanted to be Ukrainian, but the nationalism and the tradition really started coming out more in a way that I didn't see when I was living there. So the conflict started in 2014. My counterpart at that point in 2014 would tell me about going out late at night with people and spraying Ukrainian flag colors on, the side of bus stops, and because for a few days, well, a few months, it was unclear who was in control. There was conflict. and there was a lot of resistance. And then after that, the front line was maybe 30 kilometers away from the town, so life continued. But after the full-scale invasion in 2022, people over a period of time, everyone evacuated. So it was from 70,000 people to, 6 months later, maybe 5,000, and now there's no one. But it was interesting because no one knew. If I said Bakhmut, no one knew where that was. And suddenly, by fall 2022, it was in the BBC, it was New York Times, Forbes. It was the front line. Um, and because of the position, it was sort of holding Russia back from the other cities. So I, I started a list for them of all the US publications, and I have, I think, 200, 250 articles that were published in major publications that focused on Bakhmut. After the full-scale invasion, I asked my counterpart, what can I do? If I raise funds, where does it go? Because my NGO wasn't focusing on humanitarian aid at that point. And they told me about this NGO, Bakhmut Ukrainian, and there was overlap with the people I knew. Like in the photo, there's a few of the volunteers from my organization, but I didn't know them. And now I know a lot of them. They've become friends. They're amazing. Um, they started in 2014 to support all the refugees who were coming in from farther east, and to support the hospitals that were helping the military and civilians, and they were very active. Now, this photo on the right, they're in Dnipro, which is about a 4-hour drive away. And they have a warehouse where they collect supplies and get it to IDPs, to the front line, um, sleeping bags, whatever is needed, medicines. The fundraising that I did initially was challenging because I've never done anything like this. I didn't know what a chest seal was. I vaguely knew what a tourniquet was, but so many people helped. I raised before Rotary about $40,000, and with help from an organization called the Ukrainian American Coordinating Council, which had more experience, and with the RPCV Alliance for Ukraine, there was a network of people trying to help get things where they needed to be. And people who were more familiar with contacting the factory to get discounts for things like the water filters or battery packs. This first picture is a return Peace Corps volunteer who was at the airport with packages that they were flying to Poland. They did, I think, 5 or 6 trips the first few months of the war. Um, the middle picture with the bag, that was one of our bags they brought, and they sent a picture. Like, it got there. Um, the One little side bit, I'll never forget this line. For the first shipment, I wasn't sure how to coordinate it. It's what company in the US do I contact? And the director of the NGO in Ukraine said, call Oleg. Here's his number. He's in New York. And I didn't do it at first because I thought, who's Oleg? I'm not calling Oleg. It turns out in the bottom middle picture on the left, that's Oleg's father, who was in Lviv, who could help coordinate a lot of this. And they were working with North American Rescue, which is a company that makes supplies, and things just came together. So, the line I'll never forget is call Oleg. So believe what they say because they know what they're talking about. The van on the left, that was one of the NGO's vans, and they would deliver things to people still in the region who hadn't evacuated. And so many heartbreaking photos, delivering food to people. This is just a short clip. This is Natalia. I'll talk about her later. She's one of the activists, one of the artisans. She was one of the last people to leave the city. I mean, she left when they told her she had to go because, and this was in March 2023. She wanted to stay because it was a central point for donations to be delivered. And she also thought it meant a lot to the people, the civilians who were fighting, that there was still a presence. So they did so many videos for accountability. So this was one of the shipments we sent, and she did this little thank you. And after a while, I told them, you don't need to do the videos. We believe you. But they kept sending the thank you videos. This is very short. She's like, thank you very much. Can I do it one more time? So just thank you very much for your help. And then I would share that with donors. Oops, don't need to do that again. Um, so I won't read all of this. This is so when my fundraising was slowing down, and I asked uh, the RPCV Alliance for Ukraine, what can I do? They put me in contact with Partnering for Peace, who then put me in contact with Marie. And I am so grateful that this happened because I was raising, $20 here, $30 there, and this was the first large donation that they had received. They were all volunteers. They had never gotten a grant before, and this gave them the possibility to purchase a lot of what they needed at one time. So it was $25,000. It purchased food, medicine, sleeping bags. I'll show another list on the next slide. They then were put in contact, or they put themselves in contact with someone from the Dnipro City Rotary Club who met with them. I think the whole club met with the NGO, and they sent this quote. Um, the guys are real heroes. They have been delivering supplies to the most dangerous places in the country since 2014. So it was a nice connection between um, Rotary and the NGO that didn't exist before. Um, it took some time to, I think we started trying to, Marie can help me remember later, but it took some time to find a club to support it, and but it worked out, and we delivered the supplies in January and February 2023, which then helped more than 400 families and communities because there was a generator involved. So thank you, Marie. This was from the original budget that we put together, and they stuck with this. We had all the receipts and it was all detailed, but it was pretty close to this. So um, most of it was under, I never know if I did this quite right, but the hygiene category, like batteries, sleeping bags, oil for generators, and then health was all the medicines, and then food. There was a lot of shelf stable foods that they could deliver. Here's a few photos from the project. The top left is Andre from the Dnipro Rotary Club, and on the right is the director of the NGO. He met with them at the beginning, and then he was also there during the delivery of supplies. Then there's supplies at the bottom. They had different events where IDPs, internally displaced people in the region, could come collect supplies. They also shipped supplies. The postal system there will ship humanitarian aid for free. So people who were displaced around the country from Bakhmut in the region could receive bags of supplies at no cost. So I'm going to play a clip here, which again won't look exciting, but I think I sent this to Marie at the time. We were excited because it took some logistics we couldn't transfer the money, so Ukrainian American Coordinating Council helped, and then it was delivered from Lviv. So we got this video of the delivery, and I'll just play a short clip. And it was exciting because the supplies got there. So it was a whole van full of, I think there were two vans, yeah, two vans full of supplies. So it got there. We were very happy. Let me So after the Rotary grant, um, I became more involved with the RPCV Alliance for Ukraine because they had helped me so much in my efforts that I wanted to contribute and give something back. the main thing that I've worked on is they have a mini grants program. So volunteers can get $1,500 to work with their Ukrainian partner on some project. And one that I did as an example was for artisan activists who wanted to sew adaptive clothing, which is like with Velcro for people who are injured in the hospital. So they developed this project. They got $1,500 for fabric, and they sewed just over the last few months 150 sets of clothing, which can go to hospitals in the region, which sadly is really needed. Here's a photo with the Velcro. Something else I got involved with the Alliance, they have advocacy, there's advocacy events in DC. And this is me with three other Ukraine RPCVs. We would meet as part of a group. There was like 200 people there. Have meetings on the Hill to just talk about Ukraine and why we were involved and how we were promoting for support for the country. I've stopped going to those. They don't need people from New York, and it's not my skill set to advocate, but it was interesting, and I'm glad that I did it. Oh, let me stop. That was just the adaptive clothing. So one of the last things that I'll say, things evolved as I got to know the NGO people. There were several artists who were involved. The woman at the beginning of the first video that was saying thank you for the boxes, she makes some of these dolls. Another activist who's really involved, who was doing some of the videos, thank you for the boxes. She also is an artisan. So there's a lot of overlap, like journalists, artists, NGO activists. So I initially asked if I could purchase some things, and then I realized if they sent more, I could sell them. So it evolved. So the main place that we're selling things, the bottom right, that's the Ukrainian Museum in New York City. And the middle table is all crafts from 5 Bakhmut artisans. I also go to a few craft events, which is also good for talking about Ukraine for people who want to engage. So the one on the left is a table I set up, and it's been getting not fancier, but now I have the stands and I can make things look nice. It wasn't like that at the beginning. In the middle is the website for the Ukrainian Museum. So I think this is interesting. So it's economic support for the artisans because they don't have much opportunity to sell things there. But by having economic support, it allows them to continue volunteering because they're all very active with NGO. It also is indirect fundraising because they donate a lot themselves for supplies, for the NGO, for other causes in Ukraine. And it's cultural support in that they, since 2014, have tried to do a lot to promote Ukraine and tradition in the region. Top left is two of the artisans at I guess, a festival in Bakhmut years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, with traditional costumes and a photo project they did with people, in traditional dress. Uh, the bottom picture with the women sewing, they would do workshops in villages along the front line a few years ago to teach women to make the traditional dolls, like for sort of art therapy and tradition. One of the grants I got, as I said, was for adaptive clothing, and that's one of the artisans. A few photos from that. And they also sent a lot of the little dolls to help with advocacy in DC, and they went to the Ukrainian Women's League of America. So a lot of what I've done is making connections for them. So they've met more people here. So it's hard to explain to people sometimes. Like I'm selling things for artisans, but there's different components of why I'm doing it. One of the projects, I've done things with different levels of success. One of the projects we supported, and I helped them get a grant, was for a calendar with these pictures of people in traditional dress from the region, which they started years ago. And I sold some calendars in the US. I never really knew how to promote it, but they also in Ukraine sent them to cultural institutions and they sold them for fundraising. I was on a Facebook chat as they were working on this, and they spent so much time thinking about how do we present the city. This was about a year ago, because everyone, people who know about it know that it's now destroyed, and there's pictures on the right of the city was demolished. But they have a lot of pride in their city too. It's a historical city, and tourists would go there. So they called the project Genetic Code of Bakhmut, and they included the before pictures and the after pictures. And then the calendar had quotes from the models who were displaced. And I just thought it was so thoughtful how they tried to balance things and how they considered how it would be presented um, outside. So um, I'm going to show a few of the crafts once I stop sharing my screen. I can put in the chat if anyone is interested in seeing the artisans Facebook group or the NGO's Facebook group. Um, they remain dedicated. On Tuesday, I think it's this upcoming Tuesday, it's 1,000 days since the full-scale invasion, and there will be different events marking that, I guess, which is, no long, but the 1,000 days sort of notable. So I'll put that in the chat after, but I'll stop sharing and show some of the crafts. All right, so oh, let me not blur. 1 minute. Okay, so this is a traditional doll called a matanka, and matanka is from the word to wind. So it's all made by um, not with scissors or glue traditionally. I think maybe they use some for the headband. Um, but I did a workshop once and it's very sort of therapeutic. You just wind and wind to make these. And they're um, viewed as sort of talismans and charms for good luck. And they don't have faces because it was believed that faces are tied to souls. So they're used as sort of good luck um, and protection, like decorations, or for children's toys like rag dolls. And they're, you see the wounded fabric. This is made by Svetlana, who runs the organization. These little ornaments are made by Natalia, who was in that first video where she stayed in the city until they booted her as a volunteer for the NGO. And I think these are so cute as ornaments. When she was still there, she would make these for people who would drop off supplies or for the military. So, it has the military fabric, and they were given as charms for good luck for people. Two more. So one of the artisans now is in Kharkiv. I mean, they're all displaced. And she makes these corn husk dolls, which are traditional with no face, but her own style. These are also, oh, sorry, look at the basket. And most recently, this was sort of um, veered off a little bit, but linked to the Bakhmut people is a group in Cherkasy who makes all displaced women, and they make these toys, which, they make toys like this. So, it's a little bit of a risk, but I said, all right, send some and I'll check with the museum shop. And now the museum shop is selling them too. So I never know how much to tell them to send, but so far things have been working out. So that's what I've been doing, and I'd be happy to clarify anything or answer any questions.